BRoll, 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 BRoll.
What's up, y'all? Jakob Owens here for the Buff Nerds, and today we're going to talk about the importance of B-roll. Now you might be asking, Jake, what the hell is B-roll? Well, I'm about to tell you.
And hand. Good. Flatten the hand and trying to reach through and grab. Good. Two hands. Flat hands. Trying to push through.
B-roll is the additional video material that's cut together within the original content. It's used to supplement the storyline so viewers can see the visual information in more detail. It adds depth. B-roll is the extra footage captured to enrich the story that you're telling and to have greater flexibility when editing. Instead of featuring only talking heads on a video, you want to have other images you can cut away to that will add dimension or depth to your story. One of the main things you need to know though is what kind of B-roll do you need for your project. Depending on the story that you're telling, whether it's a film, documentary, music video, you need to analyze and look at what B-roll would complement what we're putting on screen. Is it a lot of detailed slow-mo footage? Is it 24 frame cutaways as the car whips by a location? You need to think critically about the B-roll you're going to shoot for your project. So like when you're shooting a music video and there's just performance, you want to be able to change the pacing of things. You want to be able to slow it down. So shooting a lot of slow-mo detailed B-roll in those instances, doing cool cutaways, product shots, artists in slow-mo, details of what they're wearing or the setting is important to cut into this performance-heavy music video. So analyzing your project and what B-roll you would need is super important. And even when you think, yep, I got enough B-roll, just shoot a little more. It never hurts to have too much footage. B-roll can be used to complement your story or your visual, or also cover up a mistake. If there's kind of a moment you missed or a scene you missed or little things, you can use that additional B-roll, that B-roll footage that you happen to grab to cover up those blank spots or those errors, or again, spots where it gets a little stale and boring. But B-roll is extremely important to any project. When I'm filming my TV shows for the football show, we'll have a sit-down interview and we're interviewing our subject, and they'll be talking about certain things, growing up in the city, playing football with their friends, practice. And so all of those things that they touch on, we have to go get B-roll moments for those things. So we'll go get B-roll shots of the city, grimy shots of LA, houses, street lights, all those things. When he's talking about football practice, getting B-roll shots of cleats, the football being hiked past, them running routes, all those B-roll moments to overlay onto what he's talking about, to give the story more context, more depth, create a visual for what he is talking about and what he's saying. Same thing with the baseball show that I recently filmed. When we're interviewing those people and they're talking about, their jerseys or their cleats or their bat they use or working out, we go and get B-roll moments of those things they're talking about so that we can overlay and edit. And that really does add a lot of texture and depth to the story, but it also just creates an unstale environment or viewing experience. If you're to sit there and watch someone just talking for 10 minutes about something without cutting away, so you have to have those B-roll moments to complement your project and add more depth. It's absolutely critical, and it's something that can't be overlooked. And I happen to see it get overlooked quite a lot. So don't forget to get B-roll. Usually B-roll is shot in slow-mo, kind of you can drag out a clip, add that dramatic effect to it because it is slow. So typically B-roll is kind of in a slow-mo fashion, but it doesn't mean it has to be slow-mo. There are plenty of times where we got B-roll that's not slow-mo. B-roll is just that subcategory of footage that you're capturing to better tell your story or complement your story or visual. So obviously B-roll is super important. It hides transitions, fixes mistakes, gives the viewer more visual information, and makes the piece as a whole look more interesting. A lot of times people don't shoot B-roll because of a time crunch, or they only have one camera, and the switching back and forth between modes to get what they want for their performances or whatever the story is, and then to go get the B-roll just doesn't make sense for the budget or the time constraints. So what can help is also having a second shooter on hand, shooting a bunch of B-roll shots of the scene that you guys are currently shooting, or going off and doing kind of a second unit shooter, second unit DP to capture strictly B-roll will help your production go faster and more efficiently while getting all the B-roll you need for your project. Because just as important as the main chunk and meat of your story or your video, the B-roll, the secondary footage, is just as important. You just have to add a little bit of B-roll to, make the project feel a little more full, a little more in depth, because as an audience member, if you're seeing the same image over and over and over, or a viewer over and over and over, you get bored. You need something to break up the monotony of a visual. And so that's why it's always good, especially when I'm editing music videos, I always edit the whole music video as a performance take first. And I've talked about this in many of my tutorials. And then I go through and I place in B-roll moments where I feel like it needs a moment because of a lyric he says, or because it gets too stale and boring. So like I said, when I go to editing a music video, I always edit the whole performance take first, if it is, a performance-based music video, and then I go in and piece the B-roll in, the storyline, if there's a storyline, watch it, and once I get a little bored, you go back, add more B-roll, spruce it up with effects and edits. But I watch the video as a whole, and when I start to get bored, or like, it goes on for a little too long now, that's when I start piecing in those B-roll moments. So you guys should do the same when you're editing a music video or a film or a commercial or whatever it is. All right, guys, that's all I have to talk about on B-roll today. If you have any questions, comments, leave them below. I'll try and get to everything as best as possible. But without further ado, I'm Jakob Owens from the Buff Nerds.